Welcome to Bible Reader Companion. This week we're going to be looking at some texts from 1 Timothy chapters 3 and 4. Again, as always, we encourage you to read these chapters as much as possible. And today we're going to be taking some text and some study from 1 Timothy chapter 3. In fact, most of our study this week will be in the early part of chapter 3. There's so much here that Paul has to say that's so important and applies to so many. He says in chapter 3 and verse 1, "This is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work." Now, what we understand is that a bishop is an overseer. It is one who is chosen as a position of leadership in God's church. You know, I don't think it can be overestimated, the importance of good leadership. What's also important is that we desire this leadership. We should desire for men to have this ability to lead and to assume this role as leadership. But you know, as men who are students of the Word and who are Christians, we should desire this. All we have to do is look at the Old Testament and see how the nation of Israel constantly had a cycle of up and down based on who the leader was. Under Joshua, extremely successful. Under those who followed Joshua, successful. But as soon as they passed away, we see that a nation arose that did not know God, and the leadership did not know God, and the nation failed. Then we come to the time of the kings. We see that David was a great man of faith, and under his leadership, which constantly was referred to as a man after God's own heart, we see the nation did well and prospered, and God blessed the nation under David's leadership. Not because David was perfect, but because David had a heart of faith and desired to lead God's people as best he could according to what God wanted him to be. When we come to the New Testament, it's also interesting to see that the one church that seems to be the church that's struggling the most of those that Paul wrote to is the church at Corinth. And interestingly enough, it's the one church that in Paul's letters he does not address the elders. Seems to be an implication they didn't have any. And we see the problems that existed in Corinth and how much they needed good leadership. So the question for us today is, number one, do we as men desire to be leaders? To be those people who will stand up and guide and help God's people be what they need to be? And number two, as God's people, do we desire that leadership? Do we encourage men to take on that leadership role and to encourage them in that leadership role? Paul said, those who desire this desire a good work. And it is certainly something that is needed and oftentimes in our church is lacking. So let us desire leadership and let us encourage leadership. Thank you. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.